Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack some, well, pretty compelling information, hopefully helping you navigate this complex world.
Yeah, and today we're looking at something really fundamental.
Faith, something we don't always stop to examine.
Exactly. And it's been thought about in, well, so many different ways over the millennia, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So in this deep dive, we're not just sticking to the usual, religious definitions.
Okay.
Our mission, based on the sources we've looked at, is to explore these different understandings of faith. We're talking ancient wisdom, personal experience.
Right, getting beyond the surface level.
And this is where it gets really interesting, we'll dive into how some pretty startling new historical revelations seem poised to challenge, well, a lot of core beliefs on a global scale.
That sounds big. So moving beyond maybe the more abstract ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
Away from descriptions that can sometimes feel a bit like, I don't know, word salad, towards something more felt, more experiential, maybe even physical.
Physical, okay.
And then we'll get into this new information about our past. Stuff our sources suggest is so profound, it might really force us to rethink, our whole shared history, our belief systems.
Wow. Okay, but you said you'd offer some guidance on navigating that, because that sounds like it could be unsettling.
Definitely. The sources do offer some perspective on how to handle what looks like a major reevaluation for many people.
Good. So where do we start? Deconstructing the usual views.
Let's do that. Think about common religious phrases, like in Christianity, putting on the armor of God. It often feels purely metaphorical, right? Maybe hard to pin down.
Sure. Like an idea you're supposed to adopt.
Right. And our source material points out something interesting here, historically speaking. That phrase really seems to pop up around the 1100s.
Okay, the 1100s. What's the significance there?
Well, that's when people were actually, wearing physical armor, metal plates, hardened leather, stuff like that. Real protection against real arrows or swords.
I see. So the metaphor landed at a time when the literal thing was common.
Exactly. But even so, for a lot of people today, these religious descriptions can still feel vague, like this external thing you're meant to just accept or somehow take on.
Something outside of you that you need to grab onto.
Precisely. It's often framed as external, then you internalize it. But what if we flip that?
But how?
What if faith is simpler, more personal? Like faith is something you have when you experience it. Something created inside you, not taken on from outside.
Okay, that feels different. More grounded, maybe. Does this have older roots, this idea?
Oh, absolutely. If you look way back, before Plato even, in ancient Greece, and also in Eastern traditions like Brahminism in India, which goes back to Sanskrit.
Okay.
They understood faith as something physical, a manifestation in the body.
So not just thinking something is true, but actually feeling it physically.
That's the core idea, yes. They described actual physical sensations. And interestingly, these descriptions line up pretty well with what we now understand about the vagus nervous system.
The vagus nerve, the one connecting the brain and gut.
That's the one. It hugely influences our emotions, our physical responses. So people experiencing what they called faith reported these ecstatic moments, really uplifting feelings, sometimes life-changing, personality-shifting moments. Mm-hmm. They talked about vibrations, sparks in their limbs, the hair on their arms or necks standing up, skin kind of swelling or flushing, blood pumping.
So really noticeable physical events.
Yeah. And apparently these faith episodes, as the source calls them, were common enough that people were openly reporting them way back, like 800 AD.
That really paints a different picture. Faith is this embodied, almost biological event. Have you seen this play out outside of religion? Maybe personally.
I have, actually. There was this one time when I was at Microsoft, big argument brewing over a networking software design.
Right.
And I was, maybe 10, 15 years older than most of the team, self-taught, no fancy degree. And I'm in this room with about 60 other engineers.
60?
Yeah, 60.
Yeah.
And they were all convinced my proposed solution was just wrong, really prejudiced against it.
That sounds incredibly intimidating. How did you handle that?
Well, I just knew my solution was right. It wasn't just a thought, I felt it. That conviction. And I actually felt those physical things we talked about, that vagus nerve thing kicking in, the hairs on my back prickling.
Really?
Yeah. It was like my body was confirming my intuition. And because of that feeling, that faith in my analysis, I knew I couldn't back down. It took 3.5 hours of arguing.
3.5 hours?
Yeah. But eventually, the project head, maybe worried about groupthink, I don't know, he decided to go with my approach.
Did it work?
It absolutely worked. It took maybe 2 weeks to implement. And the estimates were it saved Microsoft something like $750,000 in coding time, slashed the code base way down.
Wow. So that internal feeling, that faith was completely validated.
It was. And it really drives home this idea from the source. Real faith seems to require that physical response linked to your mental and emotional state. Just thinking something without that feeling, that's not quite it.
So intellectual agreement isn't enough. You need that gut feeling, that physical resonance.
Exactly. And that leads to this idea of misplaced faith, right?
So.
Well, think about gamblers. They might convince themselves they feel lucky, they have faith in a win, but often, according to the source, it's maybe a self-induced thing or a kind of washed-out, diluted version of the real experience.
Okay.
Ancient texts apparently talked about this too, distinguishing between, like, weak faith and real faith. And if your faith doesn't hold up when it hits reality,
It just vanishes.
it evaporates, yeah. And it leaves behind what the Greeks apparently called a stone feeling.
A stone feeling.
Like a cold knot, a heavy weight in your stomach. The complete opposite of that uplifting faith feeling. It's that sinking realization that something just isn't going to work out.
That's a very visceral description. Okay, so understanding faith this way, as this deep internal physical experience, that becomes really important when we talk about what the source calls an impending global crisis of faith.
Exactly. That experiential understanding is sort of the bedrock for navigating what comes next.
So what's driving this crisis, according to the source?
It's described as a convergence, a mix of current world events and these really disruptive new historical revelations, things that are set to, well, fundamentally challenge how humanity sees itself.
Challenge how?
The core idea is that maybe we've been, sold a bill of goods about what humanity is, about our history. There's this sense that a lot of disinformation needs clearing out.
Okay, and this involves a clash with existing beliefs.
That seems to be the prediction. Specifically, the source points to a coming collision between the standard Christian and Islamic interpretations of the Old Testament and this new historical data. It's framed as an opportunity to re-examine what those ancient texts were really saying.
And if people want to start that re-examination, the source recommended a specific book.
Yes, Marrow Bigino's The Naked Bible. Bigino is this Italian translator.
Right, you mentioned it. Highly respected.
Extremely. By the Catholic Church, by Jewish rabbis, for his expertise in ancient Hebrew and Aramaic. The source basically says he knows the nuts and bolts of the Bible text better than almost anyone.
Okay.
And his book is suggested for people who feel strong enough to, as the source puts it, sequester their faith.
Sequester faith, meaning?
Temporarily set aside your existing beliefs, your assumptions, while you objectively examine the historical evidence presented. Look at the text through his literal translation lens.
Got it. And the disruptive history, is that tied to this ancient language you mentioned?
It is. A lot revolves around the discovery and decipherment of this language called First Tongue.
First Tongue, not Proto-Hebrew.
Some call it that, but the source disagrees, argues it's distinct, older. It's described as a whole language system, using characters similar to ancient Hebrew, but condensed from even older pictographs. No vowels written, but consistent consonants, apparently.
And where's it found? You said it was widespread.
Yeah, surprisingly so. Littered across the Western Americas, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, California, but also Sinai, Turkey, Russia, Mexico.
Wow.
And maybe other places too, like Siberia, Polynesia. It's really expensive. There's even apparently a web app now to help with translation.
So this isn't just a few scratches on a rock somewhere. This points to something big.
That's exactly the point the source is making. First Tongue is presented as the remnant language of a sophisticated civilization before the last ice age.
Pre-ice age.
Yeah. One that was largely wiped out or scattered when the ice age ended, roughly 12,000 years ago.
And this civilization, they built things?
Apparently, yes. Huge monuments, monoliths, pyramids. We see the structures, but First Tongue is like the ephemera, their notes, their thoughts, their daily records. It gives us a window into their minds, not just their buildings.
That's incredible.
And the source draws a sharp contrast between this earlier civilization and the arrival of beings called the Elohim, or El, maybe around 5,000 years ago.
Elohim.
Yeah.
Like in the Bible.
The same term, yes. The source adjusts these beings significantly interfered or interacted with humanity, influencing our development, maybe distorting timelines, affecting our understanding of Earth's age. It challenges the conventional Jewish calendar origin, for instance.
Okay, so there's this earlier civilization, then the Elohim arrive. What about the Pre-Adamites you mentioned?
Right, that term from the source refers to the people living before the Elohim's main influence, perhaps descendants of that pre-Ice Age civilization, described as sophisticated hunter-gatherers, remnants.
So this whole picture, built from first-tongue evidence, completely reframes accepted history.
That's the contention. The source argues this information helps us get into truth, and it hammers home the point that real faith, that deep conviction, is ultimately supported by facts, even if those facts are gritty or uncomfortable, not by myths.
And we're about to get a whole lot of new facts, it sounds like.
According to the source, yes. Facts that will challenge many long-standing myths.
This is, yeah, monumental is the word. What does the source say about the impact on, say, religious institutions?
It suggests the impact will be severe, possibly even leading to the dissolution of many established religious structures.
Dissolution. Why? Just because of the history?
That's part of it, but the source also links it to what it calls historical corruption within these institutions, and importantly, their deep ties to failing central banking systems.
Central banks. How are they connected?
The source claims many major religious organizations, it specifically mentions the Catholic Church, are heavily invested in or intertwined with central banks, relying on debt-based financial systems that are seen as unstable.
So it's an intersection of a historical crisis, a faith crisis, and an economic crisis.
That's how the source presents it, yeah.
Yeah.
A global crisis of corruption, potentially much bigger in scope than past revolutions. The source even throws out a time frame suggesting this period of upheaval could last like at least 18 years.
18 years, wow. And there was that wild card you mentioned.
Yes. A very provocative idea from the source. That powers potentially losing control might play the UFO card.
Play the UFO card, meaning disclose information about extraterrestrials.
Something like that. The suggestion is this could be used to further destabilize things, maybe making institutional religion seem obsolete or under threat from, space aliens. It's presented as a potential, albeit unusual, factor.
Okay, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So amid all this potential chaos, historical revelations, institutional collapse, maybe even UFOs, how does the source suggest people hold on to their personal faith?
The advice is that concept again, sequester your faith.
Right. Set aside preconceptions.
Exactly. Take a deep breath, look at the new information, even if it's disturbing or contradicts what you thought you knew, with an open mind. The source suggests that if you can do that, you won't lose faith itself.
You won't.
No. Instead, you can come out the other side with a deeper understanding. Your faith might be transformed, reshaped by a broader reality, but it can actually become stronger, more grounded in this wider truth.
The faith adapts. It doesn't break if you approach the new information openly.
That's the message. The source really emphasizes the intrinsic value of faith, that inner conviction, regardless of religious labels. It's presented as just a necessary part of being human. And the advice is basically, don't let all the, the difficult stuff, the shit that might be coming down the pike, crush that fundamental human capacity. Hold on to that inner knowing.
That's powerful advice. This shift, this convergence, isn't far off.
The source suggests it's coming fast, maybe starting in a noticeable way as early as July or August 2025, and unfolding over the next several years. Pretty unavoidable for most people, it seems.
Well, this has certainly been a deep dive. We've talked about redefining faith, moving toward that internal, physical, experiential understanding.
An ancient understanding, really.
Right, and then these huge historical revelations potentially coming from first tongue, challenging everything.
Showing us a much older, more complex human story.
And the massive impact this could have on religious institutions, on our whole sense of history, tied up with economic shifts, too.
It's a convergence, yeah. History, faith, finance, maybe even our place in the cosmos.
So you mentioned a final provocative thought from the source.
Yes. To leave you with something to really chew on. The source suggests there's a larger conflict, a contention playing out right now over Earth.
A conflict? Between who?
It's framed intriguingly. Both sides in this conflict are apparently claiming God wins. And both sides seem to be pointing to, well, space alien cousins, as the source puts it, as their god or guiding influence.
Okay. Wow.
And it gets more specific. It mentions Yahweh, a familiar name, but says his cousin, Ezrael, is also an Elohim and is identified by some as their Satan god.
Wait, Yahweh's cousin,
Yeah,
called Satan by some.
that's the assertion in the source material. It also claims our history has been deliberately twisted and hidden by Elohim worship cultists, and that these Elohim themselves actually left Earth about 1,000 years ago.
So this whole thing we're discussing, rediscovering history, redefining faith, it's part of a bigger struggle.
According to the source, yes. It's all framed as humanity's battle to reclaim its own story, its freedom, its self-determination, without what it calls alien direction.
That is definitely a provocative thought to end on.
Indeed. So, as you navigate whatever truths continue to emerge, the final encouragement from the source is simply to keep the faith that deep, inner, experiential conviction. It's presented as your anchor through the changes to come.